So here I am in my kitchen. All right, everybody. So today we're going to, I'm going to demonstrate for you how to make a really quick and easy, refreshing summer salad. And then we're going to move right on into making chicken saltimbocca. And chicken saltimbocca, saltimbocca means jump in the mouth. And the reason that it's called that is because it's so good it wants to jump into your mouth. So let's start with the salad first. This is a great time of the year for both cucumbers and tomatoes from your garden. Hopefully you have a garden or you support one of the local farm stands so you can get some really good fresh summer tomatoes. The key to this...
Julie, can I interrupt you for one quick second?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, at the upper right of your screen, sorry, I forgot to say this, you can click speaker view, and then Julie will be bigger on your screen instead of all the boxes. So for those of you that want to see more focused in, please do that. Sorry, Julie.
Okay. All right. And we're recording this on Facebook Live, so if you missed something, you might be able to go back and see it on Facebook. And I'm also going to send the recipe. I already sent the recipe to the Jerry's to put in the newsletter so that you can have the actual recipe. So the key to this salad really is making it a little bit in advance and letting it set because it makes its own dressing, and having really good fresh produce and cutting things upright. So one of the things that I notice with teaching amateurs to cook versus professional cooks is knife techniques. And so one of the things we want to make sure that we do is cut things in same size pieces so that they are just a forkful. So let's get started on cutting. And we're going to cut up this cucumber that I already peeled. And I found that it's best to cut it into quarters lengthwise and then just cut them crosswise into about 1-inch size pieces. And so we're going to put that into make this right into our serving bowl. And then we're going to cut up the tomatoes. And we want the tomatoes to be, like I said, in similar size pieces. So you kind of have to look at them and say, how is this going to work? So this particular tomato is a little on the small side. I cut it into thirds, and then we'll cut them crosswise, and they'll be about that same 1-inch size piece. And let's put that right here so you can see that a little bit better. And the other key to this salad is that you want about equal amounts of tomatoes and cucumbers. So just about the same amount. Now you can make this salad, it can become a panzanella, which is a classic Italian salad. We just call this in our family, we just call this cucumber and tomato salad. It's pretty simple, but you could also make it into panzanella by tearing some French bread or some country style bread, and then putting it into the salad once it makes its dressing. Now the dressing is going to be just some granulated garlic, and a good quality granulated garlic. It comes from Pansy's Spices, so that's a really good brand if you're looking for one. We need salt, and this is a recipe that you cannot leave the salt out of. If you're salt sensitive or whatever, you can't leave the salt out of this because you need the salt to get the liquid out of the tomatoes and the cucumbers. We're going to put in some freshly ground black pepper, and I like to use Telecherry peppercorns. They have a lot more flavor than other peppercorns. Telecherry just means they're the best, the biggest. And then I've got some thyme leaves, and you could use fresh thyme, you could use fresh oregano, or you can use either of those dried and just use a little bit less. The rule of thumb for using fresh herbs is use about twice as much as you would use dried. So then we're just going to toss this together and then let it sit for about 15 or 20 minutes, and the juices will come out of the tomatoes and the cucumbers, and then we'll mix with the, one more important thing, extra virgin olive oil. So the olive oil is the other part of the dressing besides the juices from the tomatoes and the cucumbers. And I love the olive oil from Greenstring Farms right here in Petaluma. And if you've never been to Greenstring Farms, shame on you, and you better get out there and support them. It's a fabulous farm stand. They only sell what they grow there, and they have a really great policy of putting things back into the land. So that's our cucumber tomato salad, and you saw how fast that all happened. Now I'm going to make the chicken saltimbocca. So while we get it prepared, I'm going to heat up my pan over here, And we're gonna get this nice big pan blazing hot. So I've got that on high. And I've got boneless, skinless chicken breast. And we're gonna prepare that. So a lot of recipes for saltimbocca call for you to pound the chicken. And I don't like that. I like to cut it. And so this again is where knife skills come into play. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna pull out the tenderloin, which almost always kind of pulls itself out. And then we've got the chicken breast right here. And this is where I'm hoping Linda can help me by zooming in on this. We're going to cut this into what's called a paillard. So we're going to start right here and we're going to go right across and we're going to cut it so that we get one thickness that's about 1/4 of an inch. So we have this one piece that's about 1/4 of an inch. Some recipes say to pound the chicken breast. I find that just makes it all mushy and I don't like that. So we've got that piece there. And now this one is almost there, but not quite. So we're going to nick off this part right here. And if I cut it just right, I can flip it over. It's called butterflying it. And that way I don't lose that little piece. Now I've got some fresh sage from my garden that I chopped up. And I'm going to put, and this happens to be coated with a little bit of olive oil. You don't need to do that, but I found that I can chop up sage, coat it with a little olive oil, and freeze it. And then I can have it ready to go whenever I need it. I have a lot of tricks that I do to make it easy to cook in a hurry. So we're going to spread the sage, chopped sage over this. Now the classic recipe for chicken saltimbocca calls for you to put whole sage leaves in between the chicken and the prosciutto. But I don't like that because then some bites get a whole big piece of sage and some bites don't get any at all. So I find that chopping it up is a better way to do it. Now, there we go. Wipe off my hands. And this pan is getting nice and hot. I'm going to put some regular olive oil in my frying pan. You don't want to ever cook with extra virgin olive oil, in my opinion. I mean, unless that's all you have, because it's a waste of the great flavor of extra virgin olive oil. So you can just use regular olive oil and it works fine. Now I've got some prosciutto here, and this is San Daniele prosciutto. That's kind of considered the best of the best. And what we're going to do is take a whole piece of prosciutto and lay it on top of the chicken with the sage. And then I've got this pan nice and smoking. I don't have to pin these together or anything. If I just take it and flip it upside down in this really hot pan, and they put the prosciutto side down, it cements itself together. So I don't have to do any kind of fancy gyrations with the prosciutto to get it to stick to the chicken. And I'm going to put a piece on here. There's another little piece over here. That in the pan too. Okay, so we're going to brown those off really nice and fast. And this last one in. Now the classic saltimbocca recipe used to be made with veal. And anymore, nobody wants to eat veal. Not considered politically correct, etc., etc. It's expensive. So making it with chicken has turned out to be a really good way to make it. Get rid of this. Here so you can see that better. Now you notice that I didn't put any salt or pepper on the other side of this because the prosciutto tends to be a little salty. But I am going to season the opposite side. So just a little bit of salt on the opposite side. And then we'll give it a sprinkling of pepper. I'm going to grab my second. Okay, so this looks like it's ready to flip. Flip over there. That one over. So once these are brown, we're going to make a little pan sauce for them. And the pan sauce is going to be made with dry vermouth. I like to use dry vermouth for cooking more than white wine. Dry vermouth is shelf stable because of the herbs they put in it. It doesn't have any salt in it. You never ever want to buy what's labeled cooking wine in the store because it's full of salt. That's how they can sell it in a grocery store. They label it cooking wine because they fill it full of salt. But dry vermouth has none of those drawbacks. And it's got some extra herbs in it that make it really nice. And then I would normally use my homemade demi-glaze to make the pan sauce, but not everybody has access to homemade demi-glaze. And I found this product called Better Than Bouillon, and it's a really great, this is their roast beef base, and it's a really great product that really simulates demi-glaze. So we're going to put some of that in the pan, and we're going to finish it with a little bit of butter. Hey Walt, hang around. Can you get out the butter for me? I forgot to get that up. So the butter. I need the butter up. So,
Julie, would you like a question while you're working, or you want
yes,
it afterwards?
I can do questions, yes.
Okay, here's the question. Is the burner that you're using for purposes of the cooking show view, or is that your preference? If it's a better burner, what is it? Is it expensive? Is it gas? Share with us.
Okay, I use this for my cooking classes. That's the reason that I got it. And it works really well. It's gas, it works with a cartridge, and it's a really handy thing to have around if you have an electric stove and you want to use the really high, good heat of gas, or if you want to have an emergency stove, like if we have a power out or whatever. So I'm going to deglaze the pan with some dry vermouth. And then I'm going to put in this Better Than Bouillon that I dissolved in a little bit of water. And then we're going to just turn that up on high again. So I got this there's a wonderful store up in Katati called Asiana. And if you've never been to Asiana, you really should go there. It's a tiny little store. It's right at the place I think they call Four Corners or something. Right off of the 101 at the second Katati exit going from here. And it used to be kind of a down at the heels little Asian store, and then the guy took it over from his uncle, and he has polished that store to a little gem. He's put in all new refrigeration equipment and increased the inventory probably by about 5-fold, and he's got lots of cool things. So I got this little stove there, and it was, I want to say it was less than $50. It was not very much, and the cartridges there are not very much either. So we're going to boil this down a little bit, and now we're going to put the chicken back into the pan sauce to finish cooking. And I'm going to grab my thermometer. So the proper cooking temperature for chicken is 165 and for chicken breast. And so having a good instant read thermometer makes a big difference when you're cooking something as temperamental. I think chicken breasts are temperamental because if you cook them even a few degrees too much, they're going to be dry. And that's generally why I eat dark meat, because you can overcook that like mad and it tastes really good, but chicken breast you can't. So we're going to take the temperature here and see what we got. So we're already to 151 on that one. That one's only 125, and this is probably 132. So that just needs to go a little bit longer. But if you happen to be looking for a good instant read thermometer, I don't sell these, but there are lots of instant read thermometers in the world. They're not instant. This one is absolutely instant. It's by ThermoWorks, and so if you're wanting to treat yourself to some good piece of kitchen equipment, that's a good one to get. So we just finished cooking those off there, and another minute or two, and then they'll be ready to pull off, and then I can finish the pan sauce. But you can see how fast this is cooking. With the gas heat, you can get your pans up a really good temperature so that things will reduce and brown very nicely. Again, one of the mistakes a lot of amateur cooks make is they're afraid to use a high enough temperature. And a lot of things want to be cooked at a really high temperature, and most cooks are just afraid of that. So when you're browning things, don't be afraid of a high temperature. And a good pan that conducts heat really well is important for good results too. Having good equipment makes a big difference. Sharp knives make a big difference, and good pans make a big difference. Okay, so let's get that. Any other questions there, Bonnie?
Not yet.
Okay, all right. So
I'm hungry though.
that one's done. This one's done. And that one's almost done. That was about to put it. So I'll pull these out. And you can see that this recipe is really nice because we made one chicken breast into two nice solid portions. And a lot of people would just cook one chicken breast and serve that for one person, and it's too much food. You know, a lot of us have problems because we eat too much food, and this way you can have what looks like a nice portion on your plate. Certainly looks like plenty of food and will be plenty of food without having it be looking like it's not good.
Will the chicken continue to cook, Julie, after it reaches the 165 and after you take it out of the pan?
A tiny bit, but something that thin's not going to cook very much.
Okay.
All right. And so then we're going to put in a little bit of butter to polish off this pan sauce. So the sauce has reduced down a lot, and then we just put a little bit of cold butter in right at the end. And that will kind of enrich this pan sauce, make it really nice.
Where do you get your pancetta?
You mean the prosciutto? The prosciutto?
Yes.
Costco.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is there a specific brand of the dry vermouth that you like?
No, I buy whatever I can find that's cheap. All right, so I taste my pan sauce and put that on my chicken. Voila. Finished. So there we go. Chicken saltimbocca. Jump into your mouth. So that's my cooking demonstration. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I do teach cooking class online with Airbnb experiences, and that cooking class is how to make homemade ricotta cheese, and to make tartines with it, and to make a pasta dish with it. And I do that several times a week. And so that's the class that I'm always talking about. Does anybody want to come pick up the food? Because I make the same thing over and over and over again, and we get tired of it.
So Julie, how would you plate that, and what would your final meal look like? What would you pair it with, as far as would you pair it with a wine? You just took it out of the pan, but what is that going to look like when you sit down to serve it?
My favorite accompaniment for chicken saltimbocca is usually risotto. I like to make risotto Milanese. So I would plate it with risotto, and then usually a green vegetable, or the salad that I made just now is a perfect accompaniment for it. And you can see as it has sat here, let's see if we can see. Can you see the dressing in the bottom? There it is. So it made its own dressing. What it is the olive oil and then the juices from the tomatoes and the cucumbers. And then if you put in the toasted bread cubes, then you'd have panzanella. So I might serve it with that. It's really...
Can you reiterate why not use veal for this dish? And if you did use veal, what would be different?
Well, the two main reasons are it's expensive and hard to find. And the other reason is a lot of people object to eating veal because of the conditions that they perceive that it's raised under. In California, I think people are more enlightened, and they serve veal sell veal that's just a young calf that has but has eaten some grouse. But veal connoisseurs say that veal should never have eaten any grouse, which usually means in the dairy business or the cattle business that they have to put the veal calf in confinement, and many people object to that on humane grounds and humanitarian grounds. So that's why it's become very unpopular especially in California.
If you did use veal, what would be different in the recipe?
Nothing. I mean, you just use a veal scallopini and you do exactly the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then there's some confusion about olive oil and high heat. Thinking olive oil burns at a very low temperature. So
no, olive oil is fine for high heat cooking. The confusion happens with the extra virgin olive oil. Extra virgin olive oil is prized for the nuances of the flavors, and you get that by the kind of cold pressing method that they use to press olives. And when you subject that to the high heat of cooking, you take away all those flavors. So it's just a waste of money to use extra virgin olive oil when you can just use what's the second pressing is not extra virgin olive oil, they just call it virgin olive oil. And you use the second pressing and you can cook with it, and it's fine for high heat cooking. Plus, a lot of people prefer using non-vegetable oils. If you really want super high heat cooking, I'd recommend grapeseed oil or rice bran oil. Those two are really good for really high heat cooking. Yeah.
Can you substitute avocado oil?
You know, I believe you can. I haven't used it myself. I actually have it on my shopping list because I want to try experimenting with it. But what I've read about it is that it also is a good high heat cooking oil and is a non-vegetable oil. It's a nut oil, so to speak. Yeah.
What type of frying pan do you recommend? What are you using today?
This is Le Creuset. The Creuset brand, and I like it a lot because it's really heavy. It's what they call a clad pan, so it's stainless steel and it's got a sandwich of aluminum in the bottom, so that it conducts the heat really well, but you get the cleaning abilities of stainless steel. So one of those kind of what they call all-clad or all-clad type pans would be what I would recommend for this high heat kind of saute. That would be good. And another one of my favorite tools is this little gizmo. This is called a fish spatula. And the reason that it's really good is, can you see how thin it is? It's super duper thin. So if you have anything that's even a little bit stuck to the pan, because it's so thin, it goes right underneath and pulls it off. So one of my latest acquisitions, probably a couple of years ago, I discovered about fish spatulas, and I love it. Don't ever take my fish spatula away from me. I wouldn't be happy.
What are some of your other favorite kitchen tools that some of us may not know about?
Oh, my favorite. Well, I think, one of the things that I tell people in my class all the time that will make you a better cook is if you have a good kitchen scale. Because especially if you want to bake, baking is all about accuracy, and you need a scale so that you can weigh things properly and use weights instead of cups for measuring. For instance, if you're making chocolate chip cookies, everybody's made chocolate chip cookies one time or another, and do you ever have a problem with sometimes they like to spread way out and get really crispy and the chocolate chips are here, there, and everywhere, and other times they come out really tall and cakey, and it's really hard to find that exact sweet spot, pun intended, where there's a crispy edge and a chewy center. Well, that's all a function of measuring, and it's got to do with the brown sugar. You know how when the recipe calls for packed cups of brown sugar, it's like, how hard do you know how to pack? And so I can always get an extra tablespoon or two into the cup, and that's not good. Or some people try and cut down on the amount of sugar that they put in cookies, thinking they'll make them more healthy. Well, that's not true. Cookies are not healthy. They're just fun. So by using a weight to make the recipe, you will have a better quality outcome because the ratio of the sugar to everything else will be the right ratio. So yeah. And
are Teflon pans a no-no?
I don't like Teflon, but I've got some Silverstone pans that I like. Yeah, and they're fine, but they don't brown as well as a good all-type pan will. So there's some things I use the certain pans for. If you looked in my cupboards behind me right now, you'd be amazed that I probably have 15 frying pans of different sorts, all different sizes and different coatings and different makeups, all for different things that I cook with them. So, yeah.
Do you hand wash all of your cooking pans?
I don't wash much of anything. My husband Walter washes everything.
Does Walter hand wash the cooking pans?
Yeah, yes, he does. He doesn't like to put my cooking pans in the dishwasher. So
I'm not allowed to.
Yeah.
I don't see any more questions coming in, Julie. Anything else that you'd like to share with everyone? This was amazing. Thank you.
No, I enjoyed doing it, and hopefully, if you want me to, I'll be glad to do it again in the future. So,
Something different.
yeah, something different for Rotary, and I enjoyed having all of you join me in my kitchen. I wish that we could all be here actually together, and I could cut this up into little pieces for you to taste. But at least we can be together this way, and that's better than nothing. So, yeah, I enjoyed it.
Oh, we are all on our way because now we're hungry.
Okay.
Now I regret not having lunch before the meeting. So.
Oh,
All right.
can you freeze the saltimbocca?
Can you freeze it?
Can you freeze it?
Yes, you can freeze it, but I don't think it'll be as good. You know, the heating back up process, it's the little crispy bits of the prosciutto are not going to be there, and chicken breast is going to tend to dry out in the reheating process. So you could, but I wouldn't recommend it. All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you, everybody.
All right. Well, thank you, Julie. That was amazing.
You're welcome. I enjoyed it.
Julie had a couple of guests join us. Some joined midway, but Connie and Jan and Karen and I think Annie joined as well. Julie invited them to come on and watch today. So thank you, ladies, for joining us. Again, just a reminder, it's a great opportunity for us to invite guests to our virtual meetings. We did record today's, so when Jerry send out the viewpoint, we'll make sure you have a link to the recording in case you want to rewatch it. And I'm sure Julie would be happy to answer any other questions if anybody has any questions afterwards. So we've got about 5 minutes. Does anybody have any announcements that they'd like to make? If not, I will give everybody. Prakash, are you raising your hand? Oh, you're on mute, Prakash.